Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to APU's History Online. We're in the final stretch. We're going to finish period 6. We're going to start period 6 review today, finish it tomorrow, and then hopefully finish period 7 by the end of the week. So today we're going to review period 6. But before we get started on period 6, this is what I want to do. Today, a College Board released a demo. Well, it was actually available early, but this is official release date. So let's do this together. If you go to CB, that's collegeboard.org/APDEMO, it should. Nope. Oh, they made the website better. Okay, so they have like a video tour, practice with a demo. It goes step by step. So if you're confused, you can just go watch the video and you type the word practice, right? Literally those big in all caps, right? Just like in the picture here. And Chrome is recommended. Don't use Internet Explorer. Internet Explorer is garbage. So go to demo and we type in practice in all caps. Press caps lock. Oh, it makes it easier. Then hit caps lock again. Continue. Get started, blah, blah, blah. You put all your information. Okay, it's just to practice the way the exam is going to be. So the first exam you'll practice, or no, that you won't practice, that you'll actually do is GoPo in a week, right? Okay, on May 11th, FYI. Okay, so let's get started with, and I will be available for questions if you're still struggling. Great, let's get started. Let's warm up. Woo! Okay. So period 6, industry technology in the New South. Okay, so what would the Compromise of 1877 mean for African Americans in the South? Let's analyze it. Take like 30 seconds to analyze this source. Hey Google, 30 seconds on the clock.
Sure, 30 seconds, and that's starting now.
Look at the flags in the background. Look, one side is south, one side is north. What message, what's the point of view of the author, right? Look at the north. Look at the south. Look at the tombstone. So what commentary are they making? I know you can't read the stuff. Hey Google, stop. So there's a lot of symbolism. Look at the north, it's all destroyed in the background, all the like hardship. Look at the south, south is also destroyed. But you can see an African American family still in chains, right? So look, the south has his nose to the air. He's still got his whip, right? So whip enslaves slaves. The north is crying because we made this compromise of 1877. Look at the flag. It's upside down. That's like a state of emergency. That's a symbol for a state of emergency. Confederate flag is still intact. In memory of Union heroes in a useless war, right? So the author is saying, hey, the Compromise of 1877 was not good, all right? Who really won the war, right? It's because the North won the war, and yet the South is returning to pretty much back to the way it was before the Civil War even happened. So we're going back with black codes instead of slave codes. They're black codes. We have sharecropping, which is a legal form of slavery. We have the Jim Crow laws. We have ex-Confederate leaders coming back into political power. So all these things that shouldn't be happening are happening. And so why did we fight the Civil War if things are going to go back to the way they were, without really any change, right? Like, who really won the war? The radical Republicans in Reconstruction America after the Civil War in period 5, they questioned that to Andrew Johnson, like, dude, who really won the war? I thought the North won the war. I thought we won the war. Then why are we letting the South do what they want? Okay, we won the war, not them. And so the author feels the same way, right? And so look, dedicated to the Chicago Convention, right? So that's the presidential convention. So you can tell the author does not like what's going on with the Compromise of 1877. Between the election of the Democrat, or the electoral race of 1876 between Samuel B. Tilden, the Democrat, and the Republican Rutherford B. Hayes. So, there was a compromise, but at what cost? The Republicans became tired of fighting for Reconstruction, and they kind of were cowards, and they gave up on it, and because they were afraid they were going to start losing elections in the South. And so, as a response, they did the Compromise of 1877 to win the presidential election. But they're going to pull the troops out. They're going to withdraw the troops from the South, and everything's going to go back to the way it was pretty much before the Civil War happened. So that's what this is about. Okay, lesson overview. Content. Today we're going to go over industry technology in the New South. So there's an industrial revolution that occurs during the Civil War, right? So sometimes wartime production levels can cause an industrial boom, right? We see that happening in World War II. World War II brought America out of the Great Depression because of the production levels that industry was able to reach. And this happens during the Civil War as well. So the economy booms during the Civil War and after the Civil War, right? The economy's not good in the South, but in the North, with all the industry happening, we're going to see an economic boom, and it continues in period 6, all the way till the Panic of 1897, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, there are a couple of economic panics, like economic panic of 1873, and then 1890s there's going to be another economic depression. But aside from that, the general picture is that there is economic boom because of the industry in the North and in the South. So there's a new South initiative that tries to industrialize the South. It kind of fails. We're going to look at that. We're going to look at what was the technological advance in the United States. This is kind of like the Industrial Revolution. Socioeconomic continuities and changes. The gap between the rich and the poor is going to increase. We're going to see the effects on society and how these entrepreneurs are going to make an insane amount of money because there really isn't any government regulation during this period of time. So you're going to see these huge robber barons, also known as captains of industry, depending on your economic beliefs or economic political beliefs, right? To explain how cultural, so we're going to be talking about in this period during the Gilded Age, robber barons such as entrepreneurs such as John D. Rockefeller, the corporate tycoon with the oil industry, Standard Oil Company, and Andrew Carnegie, of U.S. Steel Company. You've got Vanderbilt with the railroads. Got a couple, billionaires who are going to emerge at this period of time, and they're way more rich than, say, Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates today, right, or Warren Buffett. John D. Rockefeller was the richest man in American history. He had $370 billion, guys. Jeff Bezos only has 145, and I say only sarcastically. That's an insane amount of money, guys. Okay, so skills. We're going to keep doing our contextualization, our sourcing, our citation. We're going to make connections over time. We're going to make our thesis statements. We're going to make our claims, and we're going to provide evidence and find the evidence within the sources, which is what we'll be doing in our DBQ May 15th. So we're going to explain how a specific historical development, so just, CCOT, comparing arguments, historical developments, HIP, right? All of that. 5 things we need to know for period 6. Large-scale industrialization and advances in technology give rise to capitalism in the era of big business. So industry is going to continue to boom. The industrial boom started in the Civil War, guys. So changing continuity over time. The boom, the production levels that start in the Civil War continue into the Gilded Age. Big business is going to rise. Farmers are going to push back because railroad monopolies, by Vanderbilt and Pullman, they're going to controlled by Vanderbilt and Pullman. They're going to come into contrast with farmers' needs, and they're going to take advantage of farmers. And the farmers are going to fight back in the form of the Granger movement, right? Think of Granger, think of Spanish, the word for farmer. Migration increase. Okay, more people are going to move around the country. African Americans are going to leave the South, big shock, And they're going to go north to cities because they want economic opportunities. People are going to come in from Asia and Europe because of the economic opportunities in America during industrialization. So we're going to have urbanization occurring. We're going to have new cultural, new intellectual movements in the Gilded Age. And there's going to be debates over citizens' rights in regards to race with African Americans and immigrants, and gender equality for women, okay, in terms of political power and political rights. Okay, the New South initiative, guys. So the New South was a plan to make the South industrialized, kind of like the North, because there was a big complaint that the South essentially was a colony of the North, right? You got the raw materials. It's kind of like mercantilism. The North, and that's why Southerners saw the Civil War as like the Second American Revolution. If you're a Northerner, you might say, "Oh, it's another revolution because we're freeing, the slaves." But Southerners were like, "Oh, we're breaking away from the tyrannical government of the North with Abraham Lincoln, and we're fighting for our freedom, our rights. We want to have the freedom to enslave other people." Kind of weird, right? Extremely controversial and contradictory. Okay, so the South was mainly agricultural, right? They relied on plantation agriculture, and a lot of people, even investors from the North wanted to make the South start to industrialize to improve the economy. Because after the Civil War, the South's economy was in shambles. It was completely destroyed, decimated because of the way that things went in the Confederacy during the time of the Civil War. So Henry W. Grady phrased the New South. Okay, so you could use that for, if you're talking about a DBQ in this time period. You could come up with or produce the name of the guy that came up with the New South Initiative. So they're like, okay, well, let's shift away from agrarian economics because that's not going to yield as much GDP as industrializing with factories, mines, and mills. So textile mills and tobacco factories will emerge in the South, but the plans for the New South aren't going to be very successful. No, it's kind of a failure. It's pretty much a failure, guys. They're going to maintain their agrarian economy, and despite a little bit of industry development in the South, it's not going to really take off. All right. So it's the proof is in the pudding, folks. By 1900, per capita income in the South was 40% less than the national average. The rural poverty persisted across much of the South and into the 20th century. So the South is typically not as wealthy as the North. And part of it is this new legalized slavery, guys. So despite slavery ending on one hand with the 13th Amendment and protecting individuals' rights, the Equal Protection Clause in the 14th Amendment, that's going to be undermined by this new system, a legal system called sharecropping, right? And tenant farming. So sharecropping and tenant farming are going to essentially be quasi-feudalism, right? People are going to work on land they don't own, right? They're going to be in debt. They're going to have to pay to rent the tools, pay to use the land, pay to for this and that, right? For equipment, for land usage, for rent, where they live, and essentially all the money goes back to the landowner. Okay, and so if you're in a constant state of debt, you're pretty much a slave. Okay, you got to understand that. So keep it in mind. Not only black people were doing sharecropping and tenant farming, there were poor white people too, who essentially were slaves as well because they don't own anything and they don't make any money. Right? It's a problem to this day, guys. A lot of Americans are in an insane amount of debt. They wish they had no money, but they have negative money, right? So it's like, man, I'm not even broke. I don't even have like no money. I wish I had no money, but I have less than no money. It's really bad, guys. It's kind of, there's comedians that make jokes like it, but I don't think I'm doing a good job. Let's move on. Okay, so yeah, sharecropping, you get a share of the crop. You get this, but you buy the seeds from the plantation owner, and you plant them, and then you get a percentage of the crop, usually like a third or a half, and then essentially you have to pay the plantation owner back with the money you make for all the stuff you rented. Okay. Success of the New South. Let's look at the positive. Let's look at some of the successes. In the South, in Birmingham, Alabama, sorry, you're going to have iron, steel manufacturing, good, so they're making industrial gains, mining, furniture production, James Duke, he's going to make cigarette rolling machines. They're going to make tobacco cigarette factories in the South in North Carolina. Textile mills in the South. So they're going to start to make clothes just like they do in the North. So they're actually going to make stuff. They're not just going to grow stuff. Okay, so there was some growth and some industrialization in the South. But look, okay, look. So the southern mill workers are going to get half the pay as the northern mill workers, right? So you can see why people are going to move from the South to the North. Obviously, you go where the pay is, right? Jim Crow laws, guys. These are really bad. Racial segregation is going to be a thing. There's going to be a case, Plessy versus Ferguson. You're going to need it for GoPo as well. That's going to legalize segregation. So separate but equal accommodations. They were definitely not equal, though. Okay, just because they have 2 bathrooms, 2 bus stops, they're not going to be the same. 2 water fountains. And Plessy versus Ferguson had to deal with a railroad, with a train, the railroad cars, 1 car for black people, 1 car for white people. The black one was all broken and run down and like moldy and decrepit. Let's take a look at our pal from the History Channel.
Williams. I'm a historian, and here's what you need to know in order to sound smart about Plessy versus Ferguson.
Uhuru Williams. So Mr. Williams, guys.
Originated with Louisiana's infamous Separate Car Act of 1890. The Separate Car Act required African Americans and whites to sit in segregated compartments on public carriers in Louisiana. People at the time of the Plessy decision actually believed that it was possible to measure the amount of black blood a person had in their body. The plaintiff in the Plessy case, Homer Adolph Plessy, was actually described as 7/8 white. Homer Plessy was arrested after he refused to give up his seat in defiance of the Separate Car Act of 1890. Plessy versus Ferguson is considered an important case because it established the doctrine of separate but equal that allowed states for the first time to legally segregate the races. One of the reasons that Homer Plessy brought suit was because of the difficulty in enforcing segregation in states like Louisiana. Louisiana had a large mixed-race population, making it very difficult to determine where the line could be drawn in terms of separating the races. The doctrine of separate but equal that grew out of Plessy versus Ferguson became the standard for all segregation ordinances after that decision. Despite the Supreme Court's ruling in Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896, the first municipality or city to pass a residential segregation ordinance was Baltimore, Maryland in 1910. The Supreme Court's landmark ruling in Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 ultimately was the death knell for the doctrine of separate but equal established in Plessy versus Ferguson.
Excellent. So Plessy versus Ferguson will be overturned in Brown versus Board of Education, which we learned in period 8. But it's going to be a while, guys. It'll be 60 years, essentially, until that happens. Okay. So, yeah. Segregation is going to undermine democracy and violate the rights of millions of Americans. Okay, the Gilded Age. So this Gilded Age was coined by Mark Twain. It just means like it's like fake on the outside, like spray painting something with gold spray paint. It's not really gold. When you get deep down to it, it's kind of decrepit and rotten. So yeah, you can see from our one way. Right. So gilded, anything that has been overlaid with gold or silver to give it appearance of being more beautiful or valuable than it actually. Anything appears to be. So when you're fake, right? So the Gilded Age is fake. Yeah, we have industrialization, we have an economic growth, but it's very one-sided. The rich just get insanely rich, and the average middle. There is no middle class. There is no, the lower class is just all struggling guys. They're working. There is no minimum wage, so people are just working to survive. There are no safety regulations. Child labor is still allowed. Just a lot of political corruption. The political machines like Tammany Hall and William Boss Tweed in New York is a prime example. So big business is just running the show, guys, and the government does nothing about it, right? So politicians are corrupt more than they are today, but it's a big problem. Regional responses to the Gilded Age. So we're going to have industries growing near natural resources to use the natural resources, right, near sources of water. Pittsburgh, they became the Steel City. That's why they're called, the NFL team's called the Pittsburgh Steelers, even though they don't really make steel anymore. Chicago is the meatpacking city, sausage. That's why The Jungle by Upton Sinclair was written about the Chicago meatpacking industry. Even today, it links with today. A lot of the meatpacking plants up north, like in Michigan and Wisconsin, are being affected by COVID-19. And there might be a meat shortage because the whole factories are getting infected with the virus, and the workers are all getting sick, and they're limiting the production of meat. The industrial cities were jam-packed with immigrants. So a lot of people are coming in from Europe and Asia to start working and getting these new factory jobs. In the West, the farmers are struggling because of, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. It's like a catch-22. So it's ironic that you're going into debt to produce more efficiently and produce more by getting better equipment, like the mechanical reaper by McCormick and the steel plow by John Deere. But there's going to be overproduction in food, and the crop prices will drop, and the farmers will make less money on their crops, which leads to them struggling to make their mortgage payments on their farms and risk losing their farms. So the railroad will have a monopoly, and they'll increase the shipping rates and keep them very high, and that's going to hurt the family farm. So the farmers are going to have to fight back with the Granger movement. So regional responses to the Gilded Age, and in the South, after the Compromise of 1877, the U.S. Army is going to withdraw from the South. This is going to be very bad for African Americans. So the 14th and 15th Amendments are not going to be permitted anymore in the South. So their citizenship and enfranchisement, the ability to vote, is going to be undermined. And so the southern states are going to pass Jim Crow laws, and they're going to enforce segregation. They're going to have all these like literacy tests, poll taxes to prevent the African Americans from voting. Okay, so let's take a look at this, guys. Analyze the impact of both the late 19th century international migration in the United States and internal migration within the United States. So let's take a minute on the clock to analyze this, guys. Hey Google, put a minute on the clock.
Okay, 1 minute. And that's starting now.
Hey Google, stop. Okay, so Josiah Strong, he's a Christian minister, um, and he is going to be critical of immigration. He doesn't like what's going on in America in terms of the growth of the cities, and so he has this kind of, essentially, he subscribes to like the white man's burden that we're going to see in period 6 with imperialism, that you have to spread Christianity to the uncultured people. So this guy, he's kind of nativist. He doesn't like foreigners. He doesn't like immigrants. Okay, so that is one of the viewpoints of immigration. There's going to be a pushback in terms of nativism and people who don't like immigrants. Rise of capitalism. So during the Gilded Age, the United States went from being a nation of farmers to a nation of factory workers. With this industrial boom, we're going to see the economy transform because of it, right? And so corporations are just going to grow exponentially They're going to increase efficiency essentially with new techniques such as new management, right? They're going to have like new managers, middle managers. They're going to have new manufacturing processes like the Bessemer process for the steel industry. They're going to do the assembly line, all these techniques to make mass production more effective. So the factory owners are going to see a huge pool of money, and the factory workers aren't going to see very much more to their daily wages, right? And so technology is going to be the driving force for the rise of industrial capitalism. Okay, with technological innovation comes improved efficiency and improved production, which leads to more profits. So, talking about technological innovation, so transportation is going to be a huge issue. We're going to have better transportation. We're going to have a vast network of railroad lines, canals, roads that help to produce materials and ship and make business transactions a lot easier, especially with the telegraph. So, you're shrinking the country essentially by making all these technological improvements. So people are going to be able to make transactions a lot easier and sell things and trade things at a faster rate and make more profit because of it. So people are going to starting to work for wages, and they're going to be on the clock. They're not going to be working for their market price, so they get paid, by their hourly production levels. So the telephone, the telegraph, all this is going to help. International train travel, refrigeration of meat. So the meat industry with the refrigeration cars, they're going to be able to keep meat cold so it doesn't spoil. It's going to connect the East Coast with the Northwest, with the Midwest, the South. We're going to have a national market now. The railroads are going to connect and unify the market. So stuff from the South or stuff from the Midwest can sell and be traded with stuff in the East Coast. So the markets are going to be unified. That's a huge deal, guys. There was a DBQ on this, and we're going to do that, and this is part of it, right? Like just unifying a national market, developing a national market. Standardization of time, guys. So the bell schedule, okay, that's going to improve efficiency. Bessemer process for steel, okay. Making, for instance, in the South, simple things like barbed wire. Barbed wire is going to revolutionize ranching and cattle farming in the South. Okay, impact of innovation. So steel is going to be produced a lot easier and more effectively. So electricity isn't going to be a new thing, but the light bulb, making lights in factories means that the factory can run 24/7, right? You can have a night shift, you can have a day shift, it doesn't matter anymore. So we're going to have like twice the production, right? So simple things like that, making an effective light bulb and inputting electricity in the city is going to help increase production, right? People are going to work longer hours. Maybe instead of having 3 shifts, they'll have 2 shifts. So you'll have to work like 12-hour shifts, which is pretty insane. Okay, guided practice. Oh, right. Another big topic. The difference between skilled workers and unskilled workers. In the past, before the Industrial Revolution, you had to have skilled workers who were master craftsmen or usually master craftsmen. Unfortunately, women aren't going to be working unless they're in the Lowell system. When we talked about the market revolution, so people are working. They know how to build everything. They have to be paid well because they're master builders, right? But when we have mass production in the assembly line, just people, unskilled labor. A dude screws in a light bulb for the car, or a dude. That's in the 1900s. But someone just does a remedial task over and over again, and it's very simple. And their arm can get chopped off, or they can get fired, and it doesn't matter because it's easy. And anybody can be replaced, and they can be paid peanuts. They can be paid. Oh, here's $1 for the week, right? Or like 10 cents an hour. Very bad. Okay, guided practice. Look at this poor little girl, child labor, working in a textile factory because her little hands can go into the machine, and they might get ripped off or stabbed with a huge needle or something. But she would just get fired, and they would hire some other little kid instead of going to kindergarten or whatever. So this is horrible. This is probably taken by Lewis Hines or Jacob Rees. Check for understanding. Okay, this will be in our exit ticket. Hey Google, put a minute on the clock.
Sure, 1 minute, and we're starting now.
Hey Google, stop. All right, so look, this is a skill we need to. So Booker T. Washington, I already know that he is a progressive era civil rights activist. So he is African American. So Booker T. Washington, along with Webb Du Bois, along with Ida B. Wells, they're going to fight for the rights of African Americans. They won't be that successful in the progressive era. And Booker T. Washington is a little bit moderate compared to Webb Du Bois. So he's just saying, like, let's assimilate. Let's get along with white people. Let's like show what we can do. Let's get an opportunity to assimilate and try our best and just work hard, right? Webb Du Bois was like more aggressive and saying like, hey, we want equal rights. Like, we're not going to settle for anything less than that. And so obviously it's not going to be he's not going to be like, yeah, sharecropping is great. Um, Education, that's going to be more Webb Du Bois, avenue, okay? Because black people they're not going to be able to go to college, much less like a good school because of segregation. So Booker T. Washington is all about opportunity, right? So he's like, hey, there, we have new industry, we have new jobs in the South. Let's try to get some opportunity to show what we can do. Just give us a shot, please, right? Trying to be Mr. Nice Guy. He wants opportunities in the New South. So support of blacks from white Southern politicians, doubtful. Okay, doubtful. So it's D, guys. Debrief and summary. Okay. So here's what we went over again, guys. This is exactly what we said at the beginning of the presentation. We're going to continue this into tomorrow. We'll end tomorrow period 6, and we'll do a period 5 DBQ. Then at the end of the week, we'll do a period 6 DBQ, and then next week we'll do a period 7 DBQ. Okay, and then we'll have done a DBQ for every period that could be tested on, and then we'll do awesome on our exam on May 15th. Great, guys. So, this is good. All right, let's do this as we close out. This will help us. Okay. This is the same question we were talking about earlier, except it was Josiah Strong, not Hilda Polacek. Let's take a minute on the clock. Hey Google, put a minute on the clock.
All right, 1 minute, starting now.
Hey Google, stop. So you don't have to know, okay, I know who Hilda Polacek is. You might not know the author always. Josiah Strong, yes, he was, he's like a vocabulary word in our course, right? Just religious figure, had like the white man burden in his afterburner, kind of xenophobic, nativist. But Hilda Stat Polacek, she is just an immigrant lady who went to Hull House. She was helped by Jane Addams, who she mentions there. Jane Addams was an activist who helped immigrants. So Hull House was one of these settlement houses, and it's a prime example of a settlement house where it was a place like a social worker hotspot that social workers would help immigrants live at Hull House or live at a settlement house. Um, Hull House was not the only settlement house, right? And so immigrants would go there, learn English, learn how to find a job. They would be like a community feeling, kind of like a dorm, but a dorm for immigrants. And everyone would share and learn and have a good time and be united. And so they learned all these skills, guys. They were getting educated. They learned skills that would help them become accustomed to American society. And at this point of time, it was really hard life because of overcrowding. There was disease. We see even today disease can be a problem. But yeah, typhoid fever, just monotony, like people just living boring lives. So Hull House was an answer for that. The settlement house was there to help immigrants. Okay, and Hull House is one of the perfect examples with Jane Addams in charge, right, in Chicago. So excellent. So, guys, in today's lesson, I'll make another video on this, but look, make sure you're going to collegeboard.org, okay, myap.collegeboard.org. Then you're going to scroll to see your classes and access AP Classroom. You've already done this, right, guys? So when we're on AP Classroom, guys, some people were having trouble with the new DBQ that I put because it's actually here where it says optional practice, right? Because they changed the category of the questions from the question bank that I get. Here you have YouTube live stream videos. That's where I get a lot of inspiration for my videos. So they're a good resource, and they're also recorded, so you don't have to go to the live ones. So if you click here, guys, what'll happen is it'll look like this. I'll unlock the certain questions that I want you to do, like the whatever DBQs, and then you click begin or continue. Right, and see it's optional, but it's really required because I'm grading them, right? Good. And then you can see the progress, like, oh, how did I do, and what were the answers or whatever. Then it shows you the DBQ, right? And you can do yes review, and it'll give you the rubric, guys. And so it'll show you stuff like, oh, review what the response should look like. It'll give you some key pointers to help you with your DBQ. Okay, and then it goes like part A, like each part of the rubric, and then you can submit, right? So for tomorrow's lesson, how did industrialization impact different groups of Americans? The rich and the poor, the immigrants, women, African Americans, minorities, all walks of life. Great. Okay. Okay. Excellent work, everyone. Make sure you do the demo today, okay? That's the assignment. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me.